Hey everyone, today we're taking apart the RX 5700 XT XFX version, the THICC as they call it. I think this is technically the THICC Ultra 2 or the THICC II Ultra. There's two variants of the card. One costs a bit more, it's got the same design, but it does have a slightly higher frequency out of box. Then the other one is the lower of the two frequencies, but same cooler design for both of them, at least externally. And we're gonna take this apart to see what it looks like internally to compare it with our review that is already live on the channel. Before that, this video is brought to you by Gigabyte's X570 Master motherboard. The X570 Master is what we use for all of our Ryzen 3000 CPU reviews and for extreme overclocking streams with the 3900X. The Master is built to handle more current than you'll push through your Ryzen CPUs. It has actual finned heat sinks for the VRMs, and it features a massively overhauled Gigabyte BIOS. Pick up the X570 Master for your Ryzen 3000 CPU at the link in the description below. Here's the XFX THICC. Like I said, we already have a review on the channel. Thermally, it was bad. For the size and the price, it's not objectively bad in that it's not hitting TJ Maxx, but it's bad in that you're spending a lot for a fat shroud in the very least, and performance that's worse than a lot of cheaper 5700 XTs. So we don't presently recommend buying this card, but we should open it up and talk about why it performs the way it does. This is also, even though it's named THICC, well, we'll see as we take it apart, but the shroud is thicker than the heatsink, so it's not like it's, what does that say? And XFX, we talked about this. We talked about this on Twitter, where you said, oh yeah, that warranty void if removed sticker. They were basically trying to play it off as, when I said that's illegal and unenforceable, XFX was like, oh yeah, but we don't enforce it anyway, so it's okay. It's just in only countries where they can get away with it. Warranty void if removed stickers. Not a fan of those, because right to repair and being able to maintain your electronics so that you don't have to replace them when a stupid fan dies is probably a good thing to allow. But anyway, we're gonna take the card apart and let's see these things. So these outer screws are going through, we'll see it more once we take them apart, but they go through the back plate, the PCB, and then hook into probably the base plate in there. So we're gonna have to take those out as well, not just the 4 primary screws. So there's a couple screws here. These two are not going through the PCB, but and they also might not need to be taken out for this. The back plate's going to be secured by these 2, 3, 4 from the other side, but we should be able to free the cooler pretty soon, if not immediately. Might need to, oh, there it goes, okay. Very cool. So in the very least, despite XFX doing what unfortunately a few companies like Power Color also do, despite the warranty void if removed stickers on there, this is actually really easy to maintain if you wanted to, which is why it's so disappointing to see those stickers, because it's like you've made it, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 screws I took out to do this. 10 screws. It'd take you 15 seconds to do that. And if you wanted to repaste the GPU in a few years once the paste starts aging, or clean out the internals of dust, it would be trivial. So there's no reason to put that sticker on there. Anyway, for the cooler design, we need to start understanding why it underperforms the way it does. And let's, I guess, take a closer look. We'll disconnect the cable here. Wow, man, holy crap. To get these out, it's nothing special, but you need to get something in this area to pry up against that lip at the top. And then there's also like kind of almost a button here. Doesn't move, but you push on that and kind of push in and up into the header on the board, and then I'll start pushing the plug out. You have to be careful because the header will rip off the board. Like that was getting pretty close. So there's a specific way to do it, but anyway. That's plastic. That's plastic. That's plastic. What's this? Oh, that's metal. Okay. Not everything's plastic. So, yeah, the grill here, the Bentley grill or whatever that is, it should be pretty obvious it's plastic. It's like got that chromed look that's not quite real. So that plastic shroud, it's not like this would have done anything if it's metal either. It does cheapen the feel quite a bit. Like it feels cheap. It sounds cheap. It sounds like, to use a quote from a Patrick when he was reviewing something, he called plastic on one of the cases a McDonald's toy plastic, and that's kind of what this is. It's got that McDonald's toy feel to it, like it came in a Happy Meal or something. But that's not consequential to cooling. This also, it's pretty obvious, like even, why does this need to be fake? You can't even see that. This is all just fake. I mean, it's not metal. It's just like a chromed plastic for whatever reason. It does feel cheap. There doesn't need to be a cooling plate here, I guess, so that's fine. It's not like it's hurting the cooling. It's just kind of odd because you can't see it anyway. But the cooler itself is in fact not plastic. Let's see, there's a copper cold plate that protrudes a bit from the block, and XFX has been known to use stainless steel in the past for their coolers, which they are doing once again. It's a magnet, and if it were aluminum, it would not be doing that. So that looks like a stainless steel, which would explain quite a bit. We tested this in the past, and with the XFX Fat Boy, that is in fact one of their names, the XFX Fat Boy card, I did the same thing where I had like a stainless steel for the memory plate, and that did have a meaningful difference. You might not think it would matter a whole ton for something as low wattage as memory, but it does account for some of the changes. Plus, depending on how they've secured this plate to the cold plate, that can also impact things. But let's take a closer look at that. This thermal pad will move slightly out of the way. Give them credit, though, for full thermal pad coverage, at least, of the memory. This one was a bit tweaked, but that was probably from removing the cooler. Well, that explains a whole hell of a lot, actually. Yeah, when I first pulled this heatsink off the card, I was looking at it thinking, what could account for those thermal results we had, because this doesn't look bad. So we've got some thermal pads connecting this stainless steel plate to the copper, nickel plate copper heat pipes there. No contact in the outer area, which is actually aluminum brushed at that. No contact in the outer area, minimal contact to the heat pipes. In fact, actually this one, if we kind of zoom in up here, you can see, this is kind of hard to hold, you can see that the impression from the heat pipes on this side doesn't really exist, so it wasn't really making contact on that side. And this is to explain for a lot of the difference. I'm curious if we saw this on the Fat Boy too, and I later did a test on that card and applied a better thermal interface between the plate and the copper cold plate and did see uplift, but that could be done better, and that would explain the memory thermals, because otherwise there wasn't really a huge reason they would be bad, except what's happening is it's sinking into a surface that's not a particularly good conductor to begin with. Stainless steel is fine, but you look at copper, and depending on the type of copper, you're in the range of the 300s to 400 watts per meter Kelvin. Aluminum's 200 something watts per meter Kelvin. Stainless steel is not close to that, depending on what type of stainless they used. But yeah, that's part of the issue. As for the rest, let's see. How's the copper plate secured? There is an air gap under the copper plate. I don't know if that persists through it or it's just at the outer edge here, but I can stick a flathead in there actually. So there's an air gap right there. If that goes in deeper than just that edge, that would explain some of the GPU heat. If there's poor contact between that copper brick and the actual the aluminum plate surrounding it. Also, I should note that a lot of the manufacturers do use just a larger copper plate instead of this mixture with all these different interfaces that all need to be connected somehow. So in terms of heat pipes, it's pretty standard. Those are 6 mil heat pipes by eye, pretty confident in that. And we've got 2 full heat pipes making contact with the GPU itself, And we've got roughly 10% of those two heat pipes making coverage of the GPU. The total count of heat pipes is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 that are going through the GPU block. And for the rest, we've got VRM cooling here. This does look to be an aluminum plate. So aluminum plate for VRM, for MOSFET contact, and that one looks like it's maybe welded into place with the lower part of the fin stack. Let's try and get this angle instead. That makes more sense. So that's normal contact right there. Just a flat plate to the bottom of the fins, making contact via a bridge, so probably welding normally or sometimes solder. In terms of actual heatsink size, it's actually not that thick as stated in the review. It's kind of thick in name only, and that's because the shroud is so plasticky and fat that it's accounting for most of that that slot requirement, that extra requirement in slot spacing, not the aluminum itself. The aluminum cooler, to be fair, it's not like it's like this one. It's not thin. That's pretty thin cooler. This was also off of a 5700 non-XT, so it's less heat it's dealing with. But it's also not really deserving of the name it was given. I'll note as well, if you want to pick up a toolkit to do surgery on your cards, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net. We've got toolkits that we built specifically for video card disassembly, and the surface I'm working on is one of our mod mats, also on the store. Okay, so that comes free. More chrome plastic. I don't know what to do with this stuff. All right. Is that stainless? Nope. So yeah, just aluminum fin stack. Nothing weird going on. It's all very standard. It's got these big holes in it that would be nice to accommodate a bit of extra airflow. One of the things we saw with the Gigabyte card was, despite not having special dedicated fin stacks on the memory like Sapphire did, Gigabyte did really well for G6 thermals, and that's because the air from the fans was getting down to the plate for the memory. So as typical, air does kind of act as a great equalizer for performance. So small touch that's on the upside here. XFX has these foam dampers on the back of the fans that'll help with vibrational noise. Also helpful with vibrational noise is not using plastic literally everywhere, but that works too. And then it is cabled, so you don't get the sort of the pin to pad contact that you do with some of the nicer cards. Actually, I still have this one out. That's pretty, I just said some of the nicer cards. This is a $450 card, actually. I don't know why I'm excusing that. This should be better. XFX has done better. In fact, let me go get another card. So XFX has done better. Like I said, I was starting to excuse that issue I was bringing up because I'd forgotten I paid $450 for the THICC. It really does seem in every way like a much cheaper card, except the exterior kind of looks nice and businessy, I guess. That's an upside. But this is an XFX card too. This is a 580, I think. And they've got these really nice fans. I love this approach to fan design. Maybe it doesn't work quite as well with these larger fans they've got on the newer card, but something like this is still doable with large fans like the Nitro's done on its outer fans. But anyway, this is just pin to pad contact, extremely easy to replace, fixes a lot of warranty problems where the user can now send out a request for just the fan, get it in, and swap it themselves. No need to send it out to XFX and wait a couple of weeks to get it back, especially if you're not in the US. So that was a really nice approach to design, and it is kind of disappointing to see just a cable for these and then, you know, bridge cable over here, as opposed to what a lot of the higher end cards are doing, again, like that Sapphire fan where it's pin pad contact. So then for the fans themselves, if you do need to replace one for some reason, we've been trying to read off the model for all of these so people can easily service their devices. CF101 0U12S. If you want to replace it, it's 12 volt, 0.45 amps. This one was, for what it's worth, manufactured pretty recently. It looks like that says maybe August. I think that says August. Hard to read the second digit. But yeah, that's the cooling solution from that side of things. And, this is just from an RPM gun because I didn't trust the RPM numbers I was getting, so external measurement. PCB, Buildzoid's done this on his channel, I think. And we're just going to take apart the rest of the cooling solution and the shroud. Now, this is another thing I kind of found annoying with the card. The V-BIOS switch is buried in here, in that small chamber. So if like the THICC, you are even remotely thick, you're not going to be able to adjust that. So it is going to be a screwdriver adjustment or some other probing implement. The forward position towards me right now is the default position, at least as we received it from retail. But that could have been improved on. That could be put somewhere where it's more accessible. Not a big deal. Still accessible, just kind of annoying. Now let's get the back plate off. Okay, two different types of screws for this. So the raised section's a shorter plastic screw. The lowered section is a longer machine screw that goes into the back plate. Then these are probably going to be a shorter machine screw. Yes, nope. Same like machine screw as the lower ones. Memory, for what it's worth, is micron on our card. It might change for yours. Okay. Plastic implement number 1 is removed. So, I mean, it's just plastic, nothing special there. That card, you know, it really puts into perspective it's basically, this card calls itself the THICC, and the PCB height is actually standard PCB height for the most part. This would be the Nitro. There's what a proper, like, plus size PCB looks like. The THICC is, by way of using these actually pointless plastic embellishments, is how do I phrase this? I don't have a better way to phrase this. It's basically stuffing its underwear is what it's doing. So that's the THICC's approach to things, and it's, you know, it's added some extra padding into its LTT branded underwear, and the card itself, once you take all the stuff off, is just a standard height card. Again, as stated in the review, THICC in name only. There comes another extra inch or so off the side of the card, and there's the back plate. No thermal pad contact. It's got the electrical, you know, insulation, so it doesn't short anything, but even better insulation is a thermal pad, so it does something and has purpose. They don't always do something, but these are flip chips, so as I've said before, because the silicon's closer to this side of the PCB, you can actually sink some heat. It might only be a couple degrees worth of difference, but difference nonetheless. And like I said, Buildzoid's got this stuff on his channel, I think, already for this card. That's a 35217 international rectifier controller. We've seen those on basically everything. And then the rest of it's really all pretty standard. Was there something plugged into that? No. What is that? I'm actually not 100% positive what that header's for. Feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm blanking on it. The fan was plugged into this one down here. And this is a retail sample card, so that shouldn't be a debug header. But let me know if you know what that is. I'm actually not positive. Could be something for a different RGB LED setup or something. But it is within the shroud, so anyway, not positive on that. But that's your fan header. And then the rest of this, I think that's it. I think we've pretty much covered it. It's nothing all that special, but it is a special price. So that's the XFX THICC Ultra 2, or whatever it's called. This was the higher end of the two options on Newegg. Other one's 20, 30 bucks cheaper. I think it's about 20 when we looked, but might change. $450 for the one we bought. It is technically the slightly higher clocked version, but even taking this cooler and putting it on a slightly lower clocked version of the card, you would still have all the issues we had. The thermals would not be all that different. So, overall, our conclusion in the review pretty much stands, which is this card, strictly for performance reasons, is not justifiable when there are better options on the market, even if there aren't many options in stock in your region. Like if you've got basically this, maybe there's no Nitro, there's no other high-end card, you have this, a Pulse, and a Gaming OC or something like that. The Pulse and the Gaming OC do take the recommendation from us over this, and they're cheaper. So the only real reason that's defensible to buy this is because you seriously like the look of the card, which is a valid reason, but that's kind of hard for me to justify. So if you can justify spending that much extra money for this businessy look, but cheap performance, it's not like nothing really is particularly quality from the cooling standpoint of things when we looked at thermals in our review. If you can justify the look, go for it, but we did warn you, there are better options out there. It's not dismal, it's not like it's unusable, but it's louder than everything else while achieving the same performance as everything else, except for the reference card. So that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net if you would like to pick up the toolkit or the mod mat that we used in this video. And you can help us out directly on patreon.com/gamersnexus, where we recently uploaded a behind the scenes video. I'll see you all next time.